Welcome to The Journey. I am Kevin Polky. I'm your host, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Well, Nick, welcome to the Kevin Polky, The Journey podcast. And it's been, we have Nick Goellner with us this morning, and I appreciate you being here. It's one of those things of meeting someone in the gym, and like I've seen you around and saw your face and knew your name, but never put the two together until we had a conversation, probably a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And so welcome. And so the journey is really about transformation and capturing conversations about individuals who've made transformations in their life, maybe business-wise, maybe professional-wise, maybe physically, spiritually, trying to capture any of those stories to spread a word and give hope to anybody who may be listening, that if we can go through a series of transformation, then they can as well.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
So Nick, tell me a little bit. As I did a little bit of looking into you and did I guess they call it stalking, Facebook stalking. But so you're married, and you have two kids, right?
Yep.
And so your wife's name is
Brittany.
Okay.
Her maiden name is Salamone.
Okay. Okay.
People might know her from the Francesco's restaurant.
Okay, from the restaurant business.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And then you have two kids, right?
Yep. Elle, she's going to be 4 this week.
Okay. Wow.
And then my son Will is like 6 months old.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, so, great.
Handful.
Parenthood is amazing to me. My son will be 23 next month, and my daughter turned 20 in September, and it's a pretty amazing experience.
Yeah. So 3 years apart, 2 kids. That's it.
Yep. So in my, we talk about it. My wife wanted to have more kids, and at the time, I think probably more out of fear or anything else, financially and all those things. We probably could have gone. We probably could have gone at least one more.
Any regrets there?
No, not any regrets. But she probably was more right than not with that idea.
Yeah.
But no, I'm very fortunate. We have 2 amazing kids, and they're doing really well. So
cool.
You'll love it. Like I've said to other people, I said I don't recall there was ever whatever stage we were in, that was the best stage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
cool.
cool.
So it was cool. So definitely enjoy that. So tell me a little bit about yourself, and tell our audience a little bit about yourself. You're from the Rockford area, from Belvedere area?
Yeah, I grew up in the Rockford area.
Okay.
Right by Showplace 16.
Okay. All right.
My family's from Germany. My dad's side of the family's from Germany, and my grandfather started a manufacturing company in town.
Okay.
Advanced Machine and Engineering.
Okay.
So that's kind of been the family business.
Okay.
And what I grew up with, my dad was really busy with work all the time.
Okay.
Just trying to grow the business, which is now a big global business.
Okay.
When I was younger, I was mostly focused on sports.
Okay.
So really, really big into soccer.
Okay.
And went overseas with soccer and spent the majority of my week thinking about soccer, playing soccer.
Okay.
And I got a little bit older and started having to do some adulting. So
Sure.
I went into a couple small little jobs here and there,
Okay.
But pretty much it just ended up being working for the family business my whole life.
Okay. So going back to the soccer piece, what got you involved with soccer? Why soccer? Not
I can't remember not loving it.
Okay.
So I think when I started playing when I was 3.
Okay.
And I was kind of naturally talented in that area, and just really loved the game.
Yeah.
And as I got older, just loved it more and more.
Yeah.
So all my friends played. Every weekend we'd be in this state or that state playing in a tournament or something. So it just became kind of the crux of my life.
Okay. So that was through club soccer and different activities like that.
Right.
And then did you play in high school as well?
Yeah. Played for Boylan.
Okay.
My senior year, we lost in the state finals.
Okay.
So that was it's one of those Uncle Rico things where it's man, if only we could have won that game.
Yeah, sure.
But it was a great experience. Learned a lot from it.
Okay. And then after high school, did you go on and continue playing soccer? It sounded like you continued playing soccer after that. Where'd you?
No, I actually didn't. I should have, but I fell in love with my girlfriend. I knew if we did this long distance thing, the chances of staying together with her were slim. And so plus I didn't really have any super attractive offers at the type of schools that I wanted to go to. I was a little bit undersized. And, so anyway, I just ended up going to Rock Valley, and I think it's all for the best because I was able to marry that girl.
Okay, all right, nice. Yeah. Okay. So if there was something regarding playing soccer, and I've been an athlete my entire life, and stopped competing from a competitive standpoint, and then moved into coaching when I was in my early 20s. So, and I think about those time periods, regardless if it was wrestling or football or even track, and then it evolved into bodybuilding. But what if there was something that soccer and going through the experience of being competing at a higher level of playing soccer and being successful at that from a team standpoint, what would you say that you kind of took away from being a soccer player?
Well, I think you just hit it the team standpoint. So there was two sports when I was growing up that my family was really involved in. It was wrestling and soccer.
Okay.
And they're totally different. When you're wrestling, it's just you and the other guy.
Yeah.
If you lose, it's all on you. You didn't really have to I know there's a lot of team aspects of wrestling in preparation, but when it's match time, it's just you and the other guy. So with soccer, you've got to rely on the other 10 players on the field on your side of the team or on your team, and you got to make it happen. You got to be really well coordinated and follow a certain scheme or system and know your role within the team and know how to elevate the people around you and play off of everybody's strengths. And so we were never one of the highest ranked teams in the state, but we just did really well because we were all playing together since we were kids. So so we kind of knew how to play really well together as a team. We didn't have any All-Americans or anything on the team, but just cohesively we were really, really talented. So I think about what makes me tick now too, even in business, and it's just finding people who have unique abilities and making sure they're in the right places to be successful, and kind of directing that whole thing. So
Well, I could definitely see, just as you were just talking about that, I could see how playing an activity, a sport like soccer, and how much having somebody in the right position and them being disciplined enough to stay within their lane, stay within their role, and how that could switch over to industry, how that could switch over to business, or in your case manufacturing. So what's it like being part of a family business? And
well, for me,
third generation, right?
Third generation. So I think for me it's it's an engineering company. My grandfather invented a machine tool for sawing steel. I'm the furthest thing from an engineer. I was a fine artist growing up. So I wanted to get an art degree. Actually, I got an associate's in arts, and I wanted to keep going, get graphic design degree, and maybe become an actual fine artist. My dad was kind of you don't want to be a starving artist. There's other opportunities out there, and I kind of thought about it too, and I was okay, so how do I fit into this family? With everyone being either an industrial engineer or a manufacturing engineer, and all very mechanical. I'm not super mechanical either. So it was all right, where's there a place? And at the time, we didn't really have much of a marketing department. And so I started in sales to get some experience in the field with the customer, and it wasn't long before my sales career transitioned into being the marketing leader at Advanced. So that's what I do now. Is I'm the marketing director of Advanced Machine, and I'm able to use some of the artistic, creative side to help a company that makes
mechanical parts communicate
in a way that's interesting, and to help them tell that story a little bit.
Interesting. So, my wife's background is she's a fine art. She got a fine arts degree from NIU, and her early focus was illustration, and that's what she wanted to be, an illustrationist. And then of course probably someone was talking to her about if you don't want to be a starving artist, right? In the late 80s, so she got into graphic design. And I remember one of her jobs when we first started dating was working at Ingersoll, cutting and tool.
Really? No way.
And
we know them well.
In the marketing department. And she said that because I was intrigued. All right, so what do you mean marketing? You're marketing marketing tooling? How does this work? And so tell us a little bit about that, because I don't know if in general when people think of marketing and thinking about TV commercials and thinking about radio. So what's marketing in the manufacturing
so
engineering?
You're talking about the journey, right? I think that's what you call the podcast. And so like everyone goes through a journey when they make a buying decision.
Okay.
They might first become like aware of a problem that they have or an opportunity that they need to solve, and then they start doing some research and starting to figure out like, okay, what are the potential solutions to this problem? And then it comes down to like, okay, I've got my short list of options here and I got to make a decision.
Right.
And we call that the buyer's journey.
Okay.
So like as marketers, our job is to like create the content that helps people get through that journey, ideally toward your solution.
Okay.
But even if it's not toward your solution, you're establishing authority and gaining credibility because you're producing the type of content that they're looking for that helps them solve a problem.
Right.
So like a really good example that anyone could understand is like if you bought a washing machine or a dishwasher or something like that from Lowe's, and they taught you like how to install it and like what to watch out for, and then maybe they created a video that helps you do that. People don't really think of that as like creativity or whatever, but like if I see that there's a video that shows me how to do something and that it was produced by like Lowe's or something like that, that's where I'm going to go buy the machine that I need to buy.
Right, exactly.
So a lot of what we do is try to help the buyer get through that journey toward the solution, because like with industrial products, it's a very niche specific audience, and the answer to their problem may not already be online.
Right.
So we try to anticipate like what are they going through, what are the jobs that they're trying to get done, and then we make sure that we create content that kind of addresses those jobs that they're trying to get done.
Well, you said something interesting about using your example with Lowe's, and if I go there, not only do I buy the let's say the dishwasher or whatever, the washer, but then they're able to help me install it.
Right, and you can sell the services and everything like that.
Yeah, and that even though I may or may not choose to install it, but let's say I do, and that was something I didn't know how to do before. Well, now not only did I get the washer or the dishwasher or whatever, now I've gotten something more that can't ever be taken from me.
Right.
And so there's just this higher value added thing that
it's like the teach a man to fish thing, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes you get this like, well, why would we teach them how to install it? We want to sell the installation services, and it's like, why don't you just teach them how to install it?
Yeah.
Like trust all the marketers on that. You'll sell more machines, and you'll actually sell more service too, because they're going to watch the video and be like, I don't know how to do this.
Absolutely, that'd be me.
And me. It took me like, I actually did one once, and it took me like 4.5 hours, and my brother-in-law was like, really? It's not that hard. I'm like, man, it was so hard.
Yeah, exactly. That's the same way with me. I can install a ceiling fan. Yeah, and I know somebody can do it a whole lot faster.
I just did one of those too. So it's kind of fun to learn now. That I'm like a dad, so I got to do dad stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But no, it's not natural to me at all.
Yeah, exactly. It is interesting because just as we were talking earlier with Dalton, I'm like, what Dalton can do and figure out in a matter of time, I'm getting frustrated with. And so, but the idea of being able, like you were saying, to either a video or something else, in creating that relationship with that potential customer, it's more than just a one-time buy. It's long term, and so.
Well, hopefully they share the content. The next time their buddy needs to install a ceiling fan, they're going to share that. Right?
Yeah.
Or if we helped someone understand what the right type of sawing machine to buy is, they're going to send it to their buddy who needs a machine like that. That buddy's going to maybe buy it from us. So.
Right. Okay. So just from what you were just talking about is this idea, right? How's Nick going to plug into this manufacturer, this engineering world, knowing that isn't really your bent, but it is a way to make a living. It is, but you still got to be Nick within it,
right?
And it sounds like that's a way of that creative side, that artistic side, that right part of your brain. Part of it is you're able to find a way of thriving and developing some skills level in learning more about manufacturing, learning more about engineering, because obviously you have to understand understand it.
Yeah.
Because you can't tell a story about something if you don't understand it.
Exactly.
But
that's a really important point. There's no substitute for subject matter expertise. So like, yes, I'm the marketing director at the business. I'm also the sales director. I travel about 25% of the year with the guys in the field and just listen to them in factories, understanding what makes the audience tick so that we can create the type of content that would address that.
Okay, sure.
So, I'm glad you said that. Like, you can't tell a good story if you don't understand what you're talking about.
Right.
Unless you're just like a phenomenal journalist and you can pull it out of the person.
Sure.
But it's a lot easier if you kind of spend some time with the people and already like what their challenges are, what they're trying to solve.
Yeah. Well, and I think even using that as an example, I think even great journalists, the difference between an average journalist and a great journalist is that great journalists, they go into their world and they really get inside the subject matter, get inside that story, and that's why they write a phenomenal story.
Right. Yeah, they can find that hook, that the way to tilt the story so it's told in a way that it's never been told before.
Right. Exactly. And so that sounds interesting to be able to go out in the field, listen to what's going on, and then get a better understanding of what's happening, and then when something comes back and you have to promote or offer those services or whatever, then you have some content to work with.
Yeah, that's what this is called. It's content marketing. It's actually what we're doing right now.
Okay.
Sharing people's stories, and like people who listen to this podcast are going to get an idea of who Kevin Polky is. They might start researching you and realize you got a consulting company counseling company.
I have a consulting company too.
Really?
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So yeah, like that was the little plug for his consulting company.
There you
I didn't realize I was even supposed to be doing that.
No, that's fine.
But yeah. And then so you shared something that had inherent value, like there was value in the podcast, whether it's entertainment value or educational value,
right.
And for that reason they might reach out to you if they ever need the services you provide. So
well, and part of what you were saying earlier in your story is really why I wanted to do this, do the podcast and capture conversations. Is I had somebody a couple weeks ago who came on and talked about. Again, his background, wanting to be an artist, wanting to be this fine art illustrationist, but you're going to starve. You're not going to be able to make money. How are you going to do this? And so he tried to go into being a designer and do these different things, and it just didn't fit. And he went through this major dark night of his soul and really struggled with that. But what came out of that was going back to who he really was, which now is a tattoo artist, and he does fine art illustration.
Yeah. I was going to say you should tell this guy to call me because we'd love to hire a good designer illustrator person right now. So.
Yeah, well, I may give him. I may make you get.
I don't know if I need any tattoos. I'm thinking about one. I don't have any tattoos yet, but I definitely need the skills that he has.
Yeah. Well, it's very hard. If you get one, there's a good possibility you get two. That's how it started with me a few years ago. So, well, let me. So it sounds like that's very much like kind of what you did in your life. You had this situation come up where you had this artistic bent. You were able, kind of like you talked about with soccer, you were able to see how the different parts came together and how things were moving. And maybe even if you weren't able to articulate that at that time, you didn't resist it and you didn't fight it. And so as you developed and grew, and then you had this not had this temptation and had this opportunity within the family business, but how is Nick going to fit?
Right.
And then I know you've just recently, over the last couple of years, started another company. Right?
Yeah.
And it's called Making Chips, right?
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about that.
So we talked a little bit about content marketing, and that's a kind of subset of marketing that I'm super passionate about. And I'll tell the whole origin story. Basically, I was mowing my yard, and I listened to a lot of of podcasts, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, I really need to know a lot more about manufacturing, so I should be listening to podcasts. I think what I searched in the podcast app was, like, machining podcast.
Okay.
You know, I just wanted to fill my mind with as much knowledge as possible, since I didn't go through, like, the engineering school or go through the machinist apprenticeship that the company offers. And I've always kind of felt like, man, that's kind of holding me back. So I searched that, and a podcast called Making Chips pops up, and I realized it's like two industry guys just kind of talking shop. And I was like, all right, cool, this should be good. And the first thing that I really noticed about it was that it was like funny, and usually with like manufacturing or engineering type content, it's like really dry, you know, it's serious, like you're reading a textbook or something.
Yeah.
But these guys would like kind of joke around with each other and give each other crap a little bit. So, and they brought great guests on. Okay. And I was just like, man, that's a great podcast. And started listening to it a lot, learning from it, and I sent them an email because, you know, I was responsible for PR for the company too. So I sent them an email that included like our little company identity video that we had produced. And I was just like, hey guys, I love your podcast, here's a little bit about my family. And it was like a really well produced video, and one of my partners who's the host, Jim Carr, he watched the video, sent me an email back, oh, I love your video, like, you should be on the podcast. So I was like, yes, you know. Sure. So I met with Jim and the other partner, Jason Zenger, and we recorded the podcast at this big trade show in Chicago called IMTS. Okay. And I remember at the time I was reading this book about like how to start a business audience first. Like, you know, you just build an audience over time, and then from there you can launch into, you know, a variety of entrepreneurial adventures. And I was thinking, man, these guys are doing that. These guys are doing content marketing. And so we meet at the trade show, and we record the episode, and Jason goes, hey, you know, we think this could be an 8-figure business someday. And I was like, I know it can. Like, I'm reading all these books about it. You guys are killing it with content marketing. And Jim Carr was like, what's content marketing? I'm like, it's what you're doing, man. You're creating content that's valuable in and of itself, and you're giving it away for free. And let me guess, are you guys charging some sponsors to, like, you know, promote their brands? They're like, a little bit. And, you know, fast forward a couple years, and we stayed in touch, and I would kind of help them with some of the strategy and stuff. And then they started generating like some really significant sponsorship revenues. But the problem with that is you can only fill your content with so many sponsors, and we want to do it in a really like natural way so that it doesn't look like a NASCAR with, like, you know, stickers all over it, right? Sure. And we want to make sure even when it's sponsored content, it's still meeting our mission to equip and inspire the manufacturing leader. Yeah. So you can't just like keep adding sponsorship spots just to try to make more money. You have to branch out after you hit a certain point in your audience and go into some other revenue generating opportunities. And that's where I came in. So I had like a 5-person marketing department at AME. Okay. It's always hard to prove the exact like ROI of the marketing that you're doing. You know, to trace like someone listened to a podcast or someone saw a video all the way back to they ended up making
ROI for our audiences.
Return on investment.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, they're trying to figure out like, okay, how do I connect everything that this marketing department is doing to a sale? Yep. And so, like, we were always kind of thought of as this, like, necessary evil, but, you know, it's this expense on the company. And I'm like, man, with content marketing, you actually, like, generate revenue with the marketing that you're doing. Like, yes, you're getting the brand awareness. Yes, it's generating opportunities for your business, but it's actually, like, a revenue generator, too. I was like, I want something like that. So what Making Chips needed was, like, a way to kind of diversify into a new revenue stream in addition to the content. And what I wanted was to take the marketing department and separate it from the business, so that we could still serve the business, but they would be a client and we could take other clients. And so what we did is we formed a joint venture. We call it Making Chips, the same name of the podcast, but now we have the marketing services and the media side. Okay. And so we've just like officially opened the doors in 2019, so we've got like 6 clients right now.
Nice. Okay. So this is really new. This is
super new. Yeah.
Super new. I mean, you're moving it from beyond the podcast platform and moving it into diversifying the business.
Yeah, I mean, we still produce the podcast every week. That's never going to change.
Okay.
We're going to do content in some other formats too.
Sure. Yeah.
We're starting a collaborative publishing model where we basically bring in some of these leaders, the type of people that we would interview on the podcast, and let them contribute content for us to publish on the Making Chips site. And then we have the whole agency side where we help companies like Advanced Machine Engineering.
Gotcha.
Drive more traffic to their website, convert more of that traffic into leads, and create more customers.
Interesting. Okay. So. All right. Well, that sounds like, again, goes back to this whole idea of you starting off at AME and moving there, but continue to grow and continue to expand and continue to follow your own passions and your own calling in that aspect.
Yeah. So now it's like my 2 roles are the sales and marketing director for AME and the managing director for Making Chips.
Okay.
And then the family is a 1/3 owner of the Making Chips brand with the other 2 hosts who founded it.
Okay, nice.
So yeah, it's just kind of a way to make the marketing department a revenue center instead of an expense.
Sure. Okay, I understand that completely.
Yeah.
In the primary company, KP Counseling, it's very much that, and I look at what have I done over since 2001 as far as marketing or promoting, and it's kind of that. I remember when I first started in 2001, I was like, all right, how am I going to advertise or market mental health, mental illness?
It's kind of
depression,
like a taboo topic sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah. So so I remember struggling with that and not knowing how to do it and not be cheesy, not be just weird, right?
Right.
And then how to do something that I would be proud of, And so what I did is I started off, and I tried one time. I did a print ad, Diane, my wife, did a great job with illustration and everything that we did, with imagery and everything we were doing, but it just didn't get much traction, and it was super expensive.
Yeah.
And but what I did right away, and my very first article that I posted, I guess they would call them today blogs, but in 2001 they didn't call them that. I did it right after 9/11. It was October of 2011, and I wrote an inspirational story. And so every month for 10 years, I would write these little short 1-2 paragraph inspirational stories just about observations that I was making, and I was just putting that out, and I actually sent it with my clients' statements, and so the idea is that even though I'm asking you to pay your bill, I want to give you something, letting you know that I'm still thinking of you.
That's awesome.
So that's how it all started. And then when the internet became much more accessible, and then I just started posting things on more of a social media platform, and then this has evolved, of how to, because I fell in love with getting content, because I couldn't stay awake at night anymore. Before I go to bed, I was used to read all the time, and now that's how I go to sleep, right?
Yeah.
And so, but the best way for me to get content and stay up on things was to listen to podcasts.
Yeah,
and so I listen to them when I'm working out, when I'm driving, when I'm doing yard work, or whatever it may be, and so that's really kind of the same
very,
journey,
very similar.
about the journey. So
let me guess, the content that you were producing and that you were sending out and like promoting, would you say that was like more effective than the kind of traditional forms of advertising?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And someone asked me about it. I don't think I ever mentioned anywhere in there other than the title, because it would all be on 1-page flyer. Did I even mention KP Counseling?
Right.
I never in any of the stories ever said anything about counseling or mental illness or anything like that. It was just about observation of life.
Same thing with Making Chips. Like Jason Zenger's got a tooling company, a tooling industrial supply company. Jim Carr has a precision machine shop. We obviously have Advanced Machine Engineering. When it's natural, we'll talk about about it on the podcast, but we don't use it as a platform to like blow our own trumpet the whole time. Yeah. It's just it's completely separate. But people learn who we are, and we. I guess indirectly get some brand awareness from it.
Well, and I think it's that piece what you just said is it's so important, and that's what intrigues me most about what I get the opportunity to do, regardless if it's in this context or in counseling or when I'm consulting or coaching or whatever it may be, is that just getting to know people's stories, which is what intrigues me, and that's really how this all started, because I just wanted, like, if I could just capture these so other people could hear what I hear on a regular basis, maybe someone else could benefit from it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it.
So that's really kind of the whole thing. So making chips is the new venture, right? And obviously it's been unfolding here for a little bit. And so, but you also are involved within the community too. I know you do things with Youth for Christ, and then you also do with Lennox Barnett Ministries. So tell us a little bit about how you got involved with that and what that's been like, and what's your experience been like with that.
Yeah, so it's easy to tell the story and kind of like forget all the conflict and all the hard parts of the journey, the uphill parts of the journey.
Feel free to jump into that too.
Yeah,
because that's a pretty important part of it.
Because I sometimes jump on podcasts and talk about making chips, and it's like, man, oh great, what a great thing, and it's like I don't tell like what I went through. What really happened was before the advanced machine engineering job turned into the making chips job, there was some big challenges. I had this like really elevated vision for where we should be from a marketing department, and I was really struggling to communicate that and really getting frustrated at the company. And when it's a family business, you don't really separate family from business, so everything's personal. So when your dad's your boss, you can easily mix it up. And we decided that it might be best for me to leave the family business for a while. So I took a job in insurance, like the worst industry for me to be in, and kind of lost track of the family and went through some like really, really stressful times. Just lots of anxiety, feeling like, all right, well, I'm gonna show them that like I can do this without them type like chip on your shoulder thing. And then
so this was like a State Farm type, like that type of
insurance? Like a big commercial insurance agency.
Commercial.
It's actually the insurance agency for our family business.
Commercial insurance.
Yeah, the best man at my wedding is like our broker, and he knew that I was in a challenging place. He's like, all right, I'll get you a meeting with my boss, and I was like, I'm going to try to get him to hire me, and I did. So great company, just didn't work out. Like I don't understand insurance. I understand making things.
Right.
And so and I work really well with the team, and there I was just like by myself. So I felt this like overwhelming responsibility to be a web designer, be a graphic designer, be a web developer, be a writer and an editor, be the strategist, and it was just all on my own, and so I spent all of my time studying and trying to figure out like how do I in 6 months check all these boxes and get all these skills. Because I think if I focused on any one of those things for a certain amount of time, I could probably get there, but trying to do it all at once, I was just overwhelming myself. And people are always like, oh, be careful you don't burn yourself out. And what I learned through that time is that like burnout is like an actual real thing. Like you're so stressed for so long, you never stop trying to like study up on everything, and then you can like actually go through depression. And so that's what happened. I ended up going through like really, really serious depression. Everything was a challenge. Family business, this new thing that I was doing in the insurance world, and then really wanting to make this making chips thing happen too, and like not wanting to lose that opportunity. And it's just like it was too much for me. So I was going to a counselor in town trying to figure out like, all right, this is an issue, I just want to get it fixed, what do I need to do? And then there was some talk like maybe you should be on some medicine for it, and I'm not like anti-medicine or anything, but I had to spend a lot of time praying and thinking about like is this what I need to be doing? Because it's a pretty big commitment to get on like an antidepressant.
Sure,
you're kind of changing your brain chemistry, and I know for some people that's the right answer, but for me, I wasn't convinced. I really didn't want to change my brain chemistry. I just wanted to feel like I used to feel. And so I had to get back to like who I truly am spiritually, you know, and that's a follower of Christ. And I had kind of lost that. I kind of like made this whole business thing an idol, and kind of just relied on help from like all the wrong places, you know. And so during that time, I remember like there's like the first time I actually started reading my Bible like consistently and just looking for answers and spending a lot of time in prayer and just like listening and trying to figure out like, okay, what is it that I need to do? And I kind of made a deal with God, like I'm going to give it a certain amount of time, and when I have clarity, and like when you and I, God, like when we're in agreement that this is what I need to do, I'll start taking some medicine. But until then, I don't want to do that, you know. I still think there's some things that I need to work out. And so like when I would sit there and when I would read, everything that's like in the Bible about actually living the Christian life is about like serving others and living for eternity and living outside of yourself. And I don't even think like the early church had time to like be stressed out about what was going on with them, because they were on a mission for something bigger than that. And I was just like, you know, here I am. My whole life I've identified as a Christian, but I've never really like lived it out, you know. Maybe I should start doing that. And so I just was looking for ways to get involved in the community and to like actually start like serving others and like helping people who are less fortunate. And that's how I got involved with YFC. So it's kind of an amazing story. Like my sister-in-laws from Francesco's were like sponsoring this family around the holiday time, and I wasn't even supposed to be involved. And then she was like, you know, we got to go to a really rough part of town and drop off these gifts. Can you come with me? My sister Michelle. And I was like, sure. So I kind of just left work a little early and said, yeah, I'll go with her. And we went with her. And like Rockford's got some rough areas, you know. And like what I saw in that place just like broke my heart. You know, it was just a cloud of smoke. There was like 7 kids. There was a couple adults there, but they, like one of them wouldn't even get out of bed. I don't know what the situation was, but it probably wasn't a very good one. There was nothing in there, and so here we go. We drop off all these gifts, and I'm thinking, like, is this really going to help them? You know, like it's going to help them temporarily, but like they need some real help. So the oldest of the kids was a guy named Neil, and I just felt like I should try to like stay involved with the kids' life, you know. And so after we dropped those gifts off, the woman who had kind of organized it all was my nephew's teacher. It was her and a friend, and the friend was talking about like, yeah, you know, it's a really, really tough situation here, and Neil's really kind of like the leader of the whole family. He's like an 18-year-old kid, and but he needs some guidance and he needs some help. And I was just like, okay, you know, nothing really clicked. And we went about our day. You know, it impacted us, but we did the good deed or whatever, and that's it, right? Well, then Sunday, I was going to this church. That Sunday, I was going to a small church. There's like 40 people in the church. And like in the front row was Beth, the woman who had organized the whole Christmas gift thing for Neil's family. And like it's a really small church, and I never thought I'd see that Beth person again. And so I started talking to Beth, and I was like, oh, it's so great to see you. She's like, well, hey, thanks a lot for helping out. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it was, you know, an honor. And I was like, how do I help more, you know? And she's like, well, Neil needs a ride to a club on Thursday. I didn't know what club was. And so I was like, sure, I'll take him. So drive to the not nice part of town, pick him up. Didn't realize I was going to pick up him and like half of his family. So I like take the car seats out of the car and like brought them all to a club. And turns out club is Youth for Christ. And so didn't really know what I was doing. And one of the leaders there she's like the director of City Life, which is like that part of Youth for Christ. It's Allie Barnett.
Sure. Yeah.
And so she's like, well, all the volunteers come over here, and I just stuck with the kids. I didn't realize I was a volunteer, you know. She's like, no, you're one of the leaders. You're a volunteer. I was like, okay, sure. So I come back, and you know, we all like pray and then talk about like how we're gonna help the kids and what kind of the focus of the evening is gonna be like. And I didn't know who Alicia Barnett was. I knew her name was Allie, but I didn't realize that she was married to this guy who was like a mentor to me growing up.
Okay.
That's Lennox Barnett.
Sure, yeah.
So, so I continued to like stay involved with Neil's family and bringing him to YFC, and through Allie, I realized, like, I was like, what's your last name? She's like, Barnett. I was like, I know a Lennox Barnett. She's like, that's my husband.
Sure.
And so then it was just like a sequential answer to prayer. Like, how do I get involved with the community and start living outside of myself? Check. You know, this is how. How do I find like friends who are kind of more focused on living out their faith? Well, there's Allie and Lennox, who are like my two of our best friends, my wife and I now. Yeah. So like, check. And then actually Lennox has a ministry too, so I'm on the board of his ministry as well.
Right.
So now that's enough. Like I gotta make sure I don't do anything else, because I'll burn out.
Right.
So, but that's kind of the whole story of how I got involved with doing some of the community stuff that I do.
So when you go back and think, and Allie's great. I've known Allie for a long time. I've known Lennox for a long time. Actually, how I think our paths actually ended up crossing and connecting faces and names and everything was I was stepping down from Lennox's board as you were stepping onto it. And so, but Lennox is a great guy. He was a powerful influence in my son and daughter's life when he was at Rockford Christian, and he was there when my son graduated from Rockford Christian during the 4 years he was there.
That's where I went to school. That's how I knew Lennox too.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Elementary school.
Okay.
And then obviously Boylan for high school.
So you were at Rockford Christian up until 8th grade?
Yep.
Okay. All right, yeah. So now, what year did you graduate from high school?
06.
Okay.
So I'm 31.
Okay, so Kelsey Grindle, is that name?
Yeah, that does kind of...
I think she's a couple years behind you.
I think my little brother Alex is friends with her.
Okay. So, all right, that's my niece.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
the name's familiar, but I barely remember high school.
Sure.
For a variety of reasons.
Yeah. Well, and you also then by that point you were at Boylan too. So then it switched over. But so going back to that idea that obviously, you know, when you're doing counseling stuff and the depression is affecting multiple areas, right? In energy wise and motivation and ability to sleep and all those different types of things, concentration. So, you know, a natural thing is for a counselor to offer, you know, looking at the possibility of maybe we need to look at an antidepressant because we don't know. Maybe there is some biochemical piece going on here.
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty normal, natural piece. But at the same time, you inside, as you were contemplating about that idea, there were some things that you know that you hadn't done yet.
Yeah.
And and I went through something very similar. Not necessarily, wasn't about medication, but it was about having spinal surgery a few years ago. And I knew that before I made that leap to do that, I wanted to go through, try to exhaust other possibilities. And so this idea of not only going down your spiritual path and trying to go back to who are you spiritually, but then taking that and putting that into action as well, and in taking these stories that you read as you were reading about Jesus' ministry and the early church ministry about being outside yourself and reaching out. And so how much do you think, or maybe that's not the right way to say it, but it sounds like that was a big turning point for you.
Well, I wouldn't say that I'm like 100% good, like mentally, ever. You know?
It's a process, right?
Yeah.
It's an up and down.
Right. You know? Like I think a lot of creatives probably are the same way. Yeah. You know, but it's just a different kind of peace that I have now, just kind of like understanding that this is all temporary. None of it really, really matters. And like now that I feel better about like the only thing that really does matter, which for me is just like glorifying God, and thinking eternally instead of just about this life right here.
Right.
It makes it easier to handle the rest. Right. So it's like the Bible talks about the Holy Spirit being like a wonderful counselor and a comforter and a protector, and like so that's what I was missing. Like I just didn't really have that strong relationship with the Holy Spirit at the time, and that doesn't mean that I'm like don't have anxiety issues or I sleep great every night. Like being an entrepreneur sucks a lot of times. It's not easy. You got to make hard decisions. You got to figure out how to answer questions that don't have an easy answer. Right. But I'm just like okay with it now. My identity isn't wrapped up in that. So.
Well, it's interesting. Yesterday I was teaching a class, or involved with teaching a class yesterday, and one of the things that came up was this idea of that when Jesus, the historical Jesus, when he was here on earth, it was a time when the Roman government was heavily was in control of the Jews, of the Hebrews at that time, and part of what the saying was, and I'm some of this I'm taking from other people, so if I don't get it right, I imagine someone will comment on that. But here's the premise of what I'm trying to get to, is that the Caesars were referred to as the Son of God. That they were considered a deity, and so as Jesus' ministry after his death happened, I don't know if he ever referred to himself as the Son of God, but he did refer to himself as the Son of Man. And this idea, how I've translated that, how I took that, and through obviously the influences of others, is that it was about how about living now. That Jesus came so that we could understand of how about living in our everyday. Yes, it was about the afterlife, but it was also about how are you living now? Are you chasing after or trying to prove to someone else what you're worth?
Right. Yeah, it's like this whole do you serve because you believe, or are you serving like it's like do you feel like you need to do these good works so that you'll believe more, or do you do these good works because you believe that he's the Son of God? Whether he was constantly talking about how he is the Son of God or not, like I think he came to show us how to live. And so like he was an action oriented person. And so it's like I think on paper I would have always said like I believe, right? But like now, like I just want my life to show that I believe. Like I do these things because like my affections have changed. I really want to do these things. I don't. It doesn't like suck to do it, or I don't feel like I serve out of like obligation or anything like that. Sometimes I get tired and it's like, man, do I really got to go to another meeting? But I get uncomfortable when I'm focused on just like temporary, like worldly things too much. So I think it's like therapeutic to get involved in some of the stuff that I'm involved in.
Well, and I think any time that we're in conflict with who we are and who we're really designed. It's kind of like going back to what you said. We're at the beginning when we first started this conversation, is that you'd always wanted to be an artist. You always wanted to be, and somehow involved with being an illustration or that creative side of you. And by trying to be something that you weren't, there was going to be tension and conflict. And you started discovering how that could be, and then not being true to how you originally identified from a spiritual standpoint. That there's you may have identified as being a Christian in your thinking, but in your heart and your actions, those were compartmentalized. And so as you aligned more, together, it doesn't make everything perfect, but it makes the flow a whole lot easier. And then you're going to see more and more opportunities to participate, to get involved. The things that are conflict, you get a higher altitude perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like when you go back to your, talked about being a soccer player. When you can start seeing the different roles, you don't need an All-American on your team to do really well. So you can just see how things flow together. Or when you were talking about the manufacturing, being able to, all right, how are we going to tell a story about this and help someone solve problems? Yeah, initially it may not be a business transaction, but it's relationship development.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, Nick, it's been definitely wonderful having you here and talking about your story, and I feel like I've gotten to know you like 1,000 times more than I knew before, and that story of not only about always being that artist inside, but then also what you went through when that conflict was happening, and where you went to find that healing, and discovering who you have been the whole time, and then having the courage to start acting that out. I really appreciate you being here on the show, and being able to share some of your story. And I know that there'll be people listening to your story going, okay, maybe that's my story too.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate you being here, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And as time unfolds, maybe we'll have you back on and see what else you're doing, and see if you're saying no to the right things, so you can say yes to the right things as well.
I think that's a big one too. Is just like trying to pile too much on.
Yeah.
I got to be careful with that. But I also just want to say, like, for me, medicine wasn't the answer, but I'm really not trying to say that, like, I'm not one of those people who thinks that, like, you shouldn't take medicine if it is the answer for you. So I just really want to make sure that's out there, Yeah,
it's a tool.
Yeah.
And it's a tool to slow the noise down, because if there is a chemical imbalance, then that medicine's there for a purpose, and it allows us then to do that tough work, either in counseling or involvement with people or whatever it may be. But it is a tool. It in itself, I've never seen, it's not going to be the solution within itself, but it's a tool to help in the healing process.
Sure.
So Nick, besides that, any last thing that you'd want to share with the people listening?
Well, I think, like, I didn't even know what the podcast was about when I got here.
Okay.
And I love hearing people's journeys.
Yeah.
So you just got another subscriber here.
All right.
I listen to about 15, 16 different podcasts right now, so this is going to be on the list.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, definitely let people know, and we'll be in touch. So thanks again for being here, Nick.
Yeah, hey, thanks, man.
All right, bye. Okay.